For joining us here on Sport Central here in Spectrum Television. And Blyden joins the conversation now. Blyden, it's a fine morning to have you return.
So good to be here, Bright James.
All right. So,
fabulous morning.
Now, fine morning to have you. Now, let's get talking. And, of course, beginning the stories this morning from the speed lanes of Formula One. First up, the news is that Max Verstappen has agreed a new year deal, contract extension with Red Bull. Remember, he's the current reigning champion in Formula One, and the deal we understand, which will formally be announced before the end of this week, will take him to his 30th birthday. And you look at the money, a little over 40 million pounds it takes him apart with Lewis Hamilton, and that must get him feeling like one of the biggest boys in the grid.
He's a new star in the league anyway, so you have to understand that, and they're finding all ways to tie him down. If you don't tie Max Verstappen down, who would you tie down? He's the reigning champion in Formula One, and if you need an aggressive driver, it has to be Max Verstappen. He seemed like the guy that onset or changed the dynamics in Formula One, making Hamilton not to be the champion any longer, and he's the main man in Formula One. The whole focus is on him, and what I like the most about it has been the fact that you realize that his contract will expire in 2023, but they have to find a way to tie him down and give him wholesome money, what, 40 million pounds, to be at par with Hamilton, making a statement that he's equally as big as Hamilton. And not just that, they make it possible such that he cannot leave the Red Bulls for Mercedes anytime soon, and that's fabulous for him, and it's a big win for me, a big win for the Red Bulls, and a big win in Formula One, because you never can tell. It's so good to have these two on the biggest stage and playing quite well the way they ought to play and doing quite well the way they ought to do.
All right, now talk about Max Verstappen. Now, the race of last season is behind us, and now we've got to turn our attentions expeditiously to the new Formula One season. Will get underway later this month. Now, from the 3-day pre-testing in Barcelona, what do you make of the Red Bull and, of course, their driver Max Verstappen's chance of defending the title he won last year in very controversial circumstances at the Yas Marina Circus at the end of season Abu Dhabi Grand Prix?
For me, the testing games seem more like friendly games. You're just trying to figure out how to go about the things you ought to go about. We're seeing the best teams. We're seeing the best teams do the things they ought to do, try the best they can to get these results, and not changing so much for me. It's early days. It's not the main event. When we get to the main event, we'll know who the big drivers are, who the big franchises are. And right now, you can take anything away from the Red Bull side. They are quality side. Current champions when it has to do with drivers ranking, and second when it has to do with the companies and the franchise. Fantastic side, and I think going forward in this current season they're going to show class. They're going to do quite well. You can take anything away from them. I cannot use the state of the testing games or matchups to compare the actual races that will come up by March. I cannot use that. Be that as it may, the testing tourneys had been all about showcasing class, showcasing the quality of cars you've had. As the word testing implies, seeing how you can shape up your team and shape up your drivers and shape up your cars. There are new cars right now, and drivers ought to get used to those cars. By the time we get to the main events, it's going to be a different ball game entirely, and we're likely going to be about the big two or the big three. And most likely, I think the competition will still be between Hamilton and Verstappen.
All right, now let's stay, on the speedless Formula One, talk about the other conversation, an offshoot of what's happening between Russia and, of course, Ukraine. We're talking the Russian-Ukraine invasion. And now, as a result, we hear the UK have banned Russian and Belarusian Formula One drivers from competing at the British Grand Prix in Silverstone on July 3rd. Now, away from the disagreement and, of course, the fiasco and what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, let's narrow it down. Is it fair to punish individuals, to punish drivers who very indirectly, have, no consequence or have made little or no contributions towards the outcome of what we're seeing between Russia and Ukraine right now? Does it make sense? And is it fair on the drivers and the athletes to be very particular, to be banned from competing in sports globally as a result of political tensions between Russia and Ukraine?
Sadly, if you want to use the word fairness, we know that it's not fair. It's not fair, but we've seen these things happen all over again, and from different kinds of sports. Let's use a case with Nigeria at the time. Nigeria were the defending champions of the Nations Cup, and 1996, Nigeria couldn't attain the Nations Cup because of political tensions, and then they were banned in 1998. And we've seen it happen all through, not just about sports. We're seeing businesses being affected because of these scenarios, the Russian invasion and the problems surrounding it. We've seen all the sanctions. And this is the sad part about wars. There are a lot of consequences, and they affect innocent people, not just businesses and sporting people. It affects individuals, even in Ukraine, who are not part of the decision making in terms of politics. When a bomb hits Ukraine or a missile hits Ukraine, it hits innocent citizens, and these are the problems. There's usually a spiral effect of wars all over the globe, affecting the economy, affecting sporting activities, and this has been what we've seen. Sadly, it's affecting people who are not part of the mix one way or the other, and this is it, like the case with Formula One, where we have the Haas driver, Nikita Mespin, being suspended, who's representing Haas franchise. And in the British Grand Prix, the British government had come out to say that there's no point, that no way anybody, whether official, driver, or a franchise that has connection with Russia, Belarus, will be able to participate in the British Grand Prix in July. Sadly, it's affecting everyone, and it is what it is. For me, I really hope that these events take a new turn, and we come to an end of the Russian problem with Ukraine, and it should be solved so that we have absolute peace in the world, and individuals go on their businesses and sporting activities to go on the way it ought to be. Sadly, this is happening, and it's happening because there are a few folks in the political realm who sit down and take these decisions that are affecting the whole world. Sadly, this is happening, and I hope it brings an end anytime soon.
If you talk about fairness, in as much as the drivers, the officials, beyond Formula One, we're talking athletes across different sports of Russian and Belarusian, descent, are not allowed to compete at major tourneys. Well, you'd say that's not fair. But what would you say about the Russia-Ukraine invasion? Is it fair? Absolutely not. And that's why we're hoping here that the issue will be resolved amicably and sometime soon, because Brian Radley said, you look at the number of individuals, you look at the number of businesses, you look at the households affected by that singular decision by one person. Of course, reminds me of the lyrics of the song by Big Sean featuring Kanye West and John Legend, said, one man can change the world, positively or negatively, and of course we're seeing the effects of one man's action. But we hope this fiasco and of course this particular incident is resolved so we can get back to living lives normally.